there's a specific kind of graveyard that I think everyone visits, maybe like once a week.
Oh, yeah.
And it isn't a physical place. It's the graveyard of brilliant ideas.
Yeah, the ones that got away.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know the feeling, right? You're in the shower or driving and just boom, you see it perfectly. The perfect business plan or how to fix the garden
Yeah.
or the first chapter of that book you've always wanted to write.
It's so vivid in that moment.
It feels real. You can almost touch it. But then, 6 months later, you look back and it never left your head.
Yeah.
It just,
Yeah.
it lived and died entirely inside your skull.
That is the universal frustration. It's that gap between the spark and the actual fire. And honestly, most people spend their entire lives trying to bridge that gap and, well, failing. They have the spark, but they never get the fire.
And we usually blame it on the standard suspects, don't we?
Yeah.
I didn't have time, or I ran out of money, or the big one, I just wasn't inspired enough.
Of course. But the source we're looking at today claims those are all just their excuses. He says the problem isn't inspiration, the problem is mechanics.
An engineering problem.
It's an engineering problem, basically. And that's actually good news, because you can fix an engineering problem. Inspiration, that's a lot harder to fix.
So, we are back again exploring another classic text. Today we're cracking open William Walker Atkinson's Thought Vibration. But we aren't trying to tackle the whole thing. We're zooming in on one specific section that I think is the most practical thing he ever wrote, the great dynamic forces.
I'm really glad we're focusing on this part. Atkinson, he was writing in the early 1900s, part of that whole new thought movement, and he can get very metaphysical.
Right. Lots of talk about magnetic currents and things.
Exactly. But this chapter, this is different. It's an instruction manual for the machinery of the mind. It's way less magic and much more mechanics.
That's the vibe I got. It felt less like a sermon and more like a blueprint. So let's set the stage. What's our mission today?
I think our mission is to solve that graveyard problem you mentioned.
Hmm.
We want to understand how to move from static mental energy, which is just, thinking and planning, to dynamic mental energy, the actual force that moves things in the real world.
Okay.
We're going to look at why we lose power, where our energy leaks out, and how to build a kind of momentum that's almost impossible to stop.
A manual for moving from thinking to doing. I think we could all use that. Before we get into the gears of the mind, though, a small request.
Mm-hmm.
If this episode helps you, please hit like and subscribe for the next one.
It really does help us keep these conversations going.
Okay, so let's start with definitions. Atkinson uses this term, dynamic forces. To a modern ear, that can sound a little like buzzword soup.
Mm-hmm.
Is he just talking about adrenaline or being hyped up?
No, and that is probably the most common mistake people make. We tend to link force or power with high emotion. The coach screaming in the locker room, or that montage in a movie where the hero is just gritting their teeth. Atkinson is really clear that that's not dynamic force. In fact, that's often just wasted energy.
Determination is a stance, not a mood.
So,
It's not a mood.
it is not a mood. A mood is like the weather. It happens to you. You wake up and you feel sunny and motivated, or you wake up and it's gray and you feel sluggish. If you rely on the weather to get anything done, you're going to be stuck at home half the time. That, for him, is the passive mind.
Let's drill down on that for a second. The passive mind versus the active mind.
Yeah.
Because I think most of us just assume our mind is, our
Yeah.
mind. We don't really think of it as having these two different modes.
Right. And Atkinson argues that the vast majority of people live almost entirely in that passive mind. The passive mind is the receiver. It reacts. It's your autopilot.
Okay.
A car backfires, you jump. Someone insults you, you get angry. You smell pizza, you get hungry. You aren't generating those things. You're just the screen they're being projected onto.
It's a servant then. It's just processing whatever comes in.
Yeah.
Exactly. A wonderful servant, by the way. It keeps you breathing, lets you drive to work without thinking about every little turn. But it's a terrible master. The dynamic force comes from the active mind. This is the part of you that imposes its will on the environment. It doesn't wait for a condition. It creates the condition.
So when we talk about determination, which is a huge piece of this text, we aren't talking about feeling determined.
Right. Determination is a stance. Think about it physically. If you're going to push a heavy car that's broken down, you don't just wander up to it. You plant your feet. You lower your center of gravity. You get into a proper stance.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that whether you feel happy or sad or tired. Determination is the mental version of planting your feet.
That's a really helpful way to see it. It's structural, not emotional.
Will is sustained direction.
Exactly. Atkinson argues that determination is the result of the will, the I, your executive self taking charge of all that mental machinery.
I want to pause on that word will, because right now, willpower has kind of a bad reputation. We treat it like a battery that just runs out. We say, oh, I have no willpower left today. Does he see it as a limited resource like that?
This is one of the most interesting parts, I think, where he really differs from a lot of modern pop psychology. We see willpower as a fuel tank.
Yeah.
Atkinson sees it as a steering mechanism. He describes will not as some big burst of effort, but as sustained direction.
Sustained direction.
Think about driving a car. The engine is your power, right? In the mind, the engine is your desire, your intellect, your creativity. You can have a huge, powerful engine, amazing ideas, super intelligent, but the will is the steering wheel.
And if you take your hands off the wheel,
It doesn't matter how powerful that engine is, you're going into a ditch, or you're just driving in circles. For Atkinson, the will is that firm grip that keeps the car moving in the direction you chose, no matter what bumps are in the road.
so when we say, I don't have the will to do this, what we're really saying is, I'm refusing to steer.
Precisely. We're letting the passive mind steer, which just means the bumps in the road are deciding where the car goes. So will is that primary power that directs the action. It's the aiming mechanism.
Okay, so we have determination, the stance,
Yeah.
and will, the steering wheel. But once you aim, you have to actually apply the force. And that's where he brings in concentration. And I have to be honest, when I hear concentration, I just think of squinting at a spreadsheet until my head hurts.
We all do. We associate it with tension, like we have to scrunch up our forehead and try really hard. But Atkinson's definition is it's almost a negative action. It isn't just looking at something. It's the refusal of mental scatter.
Concentration rejects mental scatter.
The refusal of scatter. Wow. That feels more relevant today than ever. I mean, Atkinson didn't have a smartphone, but he seemed to understand distraction perfectly.
He really did. He uses that burning glass analogy, which is a classic for a reason. Just imagine a magnifying glass.
Sure, we've all done that experiment with the sun and a leaf or something.
Right. So the sun sends down rays of heat and light everywhere, covers the whole yard. And those rays are, they're warm, pleasant, they make the grass grow, but they're diffused. They don't burn anything.
Because the energy is spread too thin.
But if you take that lens, that magnifying glass, and you bring all those scattered rays to a single, tiny focal point, what happens?
You get fire. You burn a hole in the leaf.
You get impact. You actually change the physical reality of the thing you're focusing on. That is dynamic force. It's the ability to bring all your mental resources to a single point to create a result. And the second you let your mind wander, the second you check your phone or think about dinner, the lens moves, the focal point blurs, the heat just dissipates.
And you're back to just being warm.
Exactly. And warmth doesn't change the world. Fire does.
This leads us right into what I found to be the most convicting part of this whole thing. Atkinson spends a lot of time explaining why this fails for most people. He argues we're not necessarily lacking power, we're just incredibly wasteful. He calls these leaks.
Stop the energy leaks.
The waste of energy. This is so critical. We always think the solution is more power. I need another book, more coffee, a better app, more motivation. Atkinson says no. You're probably generating plenty of power. You're just a bucket full of holes. You're letting it all leak out before it ever does any work.
I want to walk through these leaks one by one because when I read this list, I felt personally attacked. It was like he had a camera watching me work.
You and me both. It's a painful list because it's so accurate.
The first one that he identifies is the cost of starting and stopping.
This is just pure physics, really. Think about pushing a heavy cart or a stalled car. What's the hardest part?
Getting it to move that first inch.
Right. Overcoming inertia. It takes this huge surge of energy. You have to heave against it. But once it's rolling,
It's way easier. You just have to keep it moving.
you can keep it going with a light touch. But, and here's the leak, what happens if you stop?
You lose all the momentum. And if you want to start again, you have to do that big, heavy push all over again.
All over again. You have to pay that huge energy tax a second time. And Atkinson points out that so many people treat their goals like stop-and-go traffic. They'll burst into action for 10 minutes, then stop to check email, then start again, then stop for a snack. They are just exhausting themselves fighting inertia over and over. They never get to that cruising speed where the real work gets done.
So the leak is friction.
Yeah.
We're burning all our fuel just getting back up to speed.
Yes, consistency preserves your momentum. Stopping just destroys it.
Okay, that one is huge. But the second leak might be even bigger. He calls it arguing with yourself.
The internal civil war. This is a massive drain on the will. We talked about the will being the steering wheel. Imagine you're driving and your left hand is fighting your right hand.
You'd be exhausted, and you'd end up in a ditch.
Exactly. Atkinson says the time for debate is before the decision. You weigh the pros, the cons, you use your intellect. But once the I, that executive part of you, decides, the debate must end. The gavel has banged.
I love that image. The debate must end. Because we don't do that, do we? We decide to go to the gym, and then 5 minutes later the debate starts again. Well, my leg is a little sore. Maybe tomorrow.
And that's the leak. Every time you relitigate a decision, you're leaking dynamic force. You decide to wake up early, the alarm goes off. If you start debating, am I too tired? Is it too cold? You're leaking power. The decision was already made. The I decided last night. Now the passive mind just needs to execute the command.
It's like a court case. Once the verdict is in, you don't just keep arguing. You move on.
Precisely. Relitigating is a leak. It splits your forces.
Okay, leak number 3. Talking against your aim. Now, this can sound a bit like positive thinking fluff, but he seems to mean something more neurological here.
He does. It isn't just be happy. He's saying that words are pathways. When you verbalize your doubt, when you complain about how hard something is, or say, I'll never get this done, you are literally carving a groove in your brain. You're telling your passive mind, which is your literal servant, that the goal is failure or difficulty.
So the passive mind hears, this is impossible, and just goes, okay, boss, understood. I'll make sure it feels impossible.
Exactly. You're reinforcing the negative pathways. Atkinson calls them passive ruts. If you talk against your aim, you are digging a rut that leads away from where you want to go. You're confusing the steering wheel.
It's like you're turning the wheel left while shouting, go right.
That's a perfect way to put it. You're sabotaging your own navigation.
Okay, the 4th leak. This one has a great name. The mental polygamist.
Yes. The mental polygamist. This is the person who flirts with a dozen ideas but never marries any of them.
Ouch. I think a lot of creative people are going to feel that one.
We live in an economy of novelty, right? We're addicted to the new. The start of a project is exciting. It's a dopamine hit. Anything feels possible. But as soon as the work gets hard or boring or technical, the novelty wears off.
And then you see another shiny new idea over there, and it looks so perfect and easy.
So you chase it. Atkinson warns this habit is so destructive to the will. It trains your mind to crave the start and fear the finish. You end up dissipating all your dynamic force across 10 shallow holes instead of digging one deep well.
Chasing novelty instead of depth.
Yeah.
That's a serious leak.
Yep.
And the last one is connected to that quitting at the first stall.
Misinterpreting the plateau. In any real process, learning a language, lifting weights, building a business, there are moments where progress just seems to stop.
The stall?
Yeah, the stall. And so many people see that as failure. They think, oh, it's not working anymore. Atkinson argues that the stall is just part of the rhythm. It's where the pressure is building up.
It's the silence just before the breakthrough happens.
Exactly. And quitting there is a waste of all the energy you already invested. It's leaving when you're literally 1 foot away from the treasure.
So the big takeaway from this section on leaks is, we don't necessarily need to be superhuman. We just need to plug the holes in our bucket.
Right. Closing the leaks often provides more immediate power than trying to generate more energy. If you just stop starting and stopping, stop arguing with yourself, and stop chasing every new shiny thing, you suddenly find you have this massive amount of force available that you didn't even know was there.
Which brings us to the how. How do we apply this force now that the leaks are plugged? Atkinson has a specific principle here that I think is the core of everything. The difference between explosive force and steady pressure.
Consistency beats intensity.
This is the steady pressure principle. And to explain it, we have to look at the analogy of the hydraulic jack versus the sledgehammer.
I love this visual. It's so clear. Walk us through it.
Okay, imagine you have to lift a massive weight, a huge project like writing a book. You could take a sledgehammer and just swing it with all your might. That's explosive force. It's intense, it's loud, it feels powerful.
And you break things, or you just hurt your back.
It breaks things or it bounces off. It's exhausting. You can only swing a sledgehammer like that so many times before you collapse. But a hydraulic jack, you know, the kind you use to lift a car?
Sure. You just pump the little handle.
You bump the handle. It's a small motion. Click. You do it again. Click. It takes very little effort on each pump. But the pressure is continuous. It's cumulative. And that slow, steady, relentless pressure can lift a building. Atkinson says the mind works the same way. Mental waves are cumulative.
So a small amount of force applied without a break beats a massive amount of force applied once in a while.
Every single time. Consistency beats intensity. This is why cramming for a test doesn't lead to long-term learning, but studying for 20 minutes a day leads to mastery. The hydraulic jack moves the mountain, the hammer just makes noise.
Steady pressure wins.
And this connects right back to the leaks, too. If you're using the hydraulic jack, you can't just release the pressure. If you stop, the weight just crashes back down.
Exactly. You have to hold the tension. You have to maintain that pressure. It's not about how hard you push in any one moment. It's about never letting go.
Now, before we get to the practical examples, there is a kind of warning in the text, a guardrail. Because when we talk about will and power and influence, it can start to sound a little dark if you're not careful.
It can. You have to remember the time he was writing in, people were very interested in personal magnetism and influence, and there were a lot of charlatans out there selling courses on how to, hypnotize your boss. But Atkinson is very strict about what he calls the integrity guardrail.
Integrity protects your power.
What's the rule then?
The rule is that these forces are neutral tools, like electricity. You can use electricity to light up a hospital, or you can use it for something destructive. But Atkinson warns that using mental force for manipulation, for coercion, or to dominate other people, it creates a backlash.
A boomerang effect.
Yes. He believed in a kind of vibrational physics where negative intent creates a negative frequency that eventually comes back to you. But even if you strip away the metaphysics, practically speaking, if you use your will to bully people, you create resistance, you create enemies. And eventually that resistance will overwhelm you.
So the rule is to use power with the right intent for self-mastery, to build, to create, to help, but never to coerce.
Integrity protects your power. It keeps the channel clean.
Okay, let's make this real. We've got the theory. Determination, will, concentration, plug the leaks, steady pressure. How does this actually look in real life? Because it's easy to talk about hydraulic jacks in the abstract, but what about on a Tuesday morning when I'm just staring in my inbox?
Right.
Let's do 3 scenarios. First up,
Work.
finish what you start.
Okay, let's take a project that feels overwhelming. A book, a massive report, whatever. The sledgehammer approach is to wait until the deadline is close and then pull 3 all-nighters.
Which we've all done. And it destroys you. The quality is usually terrible, and you spend the next week just recovering. Exactly. And the work is brittle. The dynamic force approach, using that hydraulic jack, is to apply the finish what you start rule combined with steady pressure.
So how do you do that tactically?
You pick one priority, just one, and you protect it. This goes back to the burning glass. You refuse to scatter your attention. You say, I will not touch secondary tasks, I will not check email, I will not do the busy work until this one primary dynamic aim receives its steady pressure for the day.
Even if it's just for like an hour.
Especially if it's just for an hour, because if you do that every day, the cumulative force is massive. You're training your passive mind to understand that this thing matters. You're clicking the jack 1 notch, click, and then you do it again tomorrow, click. Before you know it, the project is done.
Okay, scenario B, relationships. This one's tricky because, other people have their own dynamic forces or their own lack of them.
Calm, strength, and relationship.
Or their own chaos. Let's say there's conflict or tension, maybe with a partner or a colleague who is stressed, angry, or moody.
The source material talks about emotional contagion.
Yes. If someone walks into the room slamming doors, the natural passive reaction is to catch that virus. You tense up. You get angry back, or you get scared.
You let their mood dictate your state. You become the thermometer, just reacting to the temperature instead of being the thermostat.
Exactly. That's a leak. You're losing your center. The application here is calm strength. You apply steady, positive pressure.
Yeah.
You refuse to vibrate at their frequency.
So you're not fighting fire with fire.
No, because that's just 2 sledgehammers hitting each other. You become the hydraulic jack. You apply consistent calm repair. You listen. You hold your ground, but you don't escalate.
Yeah.
You prove that your internal weather is determined by you, not by them.
That is hard to do. It takes a lot of that will we were talking about. But I can see how powerful it would be. It would change the whole dynamic of a room.
It acts as an anchor. Eventually the storm passes, and you're still standing. And usually the other person calms down because they have nothing to bounce their anger off of.
Okay. Scenario C, habits. We all want to build better habits.
And here we look at the idea of proof of determination. The scenario is building a new discipline exercise, reading, whatever it is.
And the mistake is the New Year's resolution approach. The sledgehammer again. I'm going to run 10 miles a day starting tomorrow.
And then you quit on day 4 because you're sore and tired. The fix is the anchor routine. You need a small, non-negotiable action that proves to your subconscious, your passive mind, that you are in charge.
We saw a reference to Marcus Aurelius in the notes for this.
Yes, the Stoic emperor. He struggled to get out of bed. He wrote about it in his journals. He actually had to argue with himself, remind himself that he was a human being designed for action, not for hiding under the blankets.
It's kind of comforting to know that even a Roman emperor wanted to hit the snooze button.
It is, but he forced himself up. So the anchor routine might be just that. Getting up.
Just getting up.
Yeah. Getting up when the alarm rings. Making the bed. Drinking a glass of water. It's not about the size of the task, it's about the certainty of it. If you can prove to yourself that you can command your body to move when it wants to stay still, you're generating dynamic force. You're tightening your grip on that steering wheel.
It's the daily proof. I said I would move, and I moved.
Exactly. If you can't control the small things, the passive mind knows you won't be able to control the big things.
Okay, before we get to our guided exercise, I want to do some troubleshooting. Let's look at the common mistakes people make when they try to apply this stuff. Because it sounds simple, but it is not easy.
But why isn't this working?
Yeah. Mistake 1, confusing force with aggression. We touched on this, but let's make it really clear.
Real force is silent. Think of gravity. It holds the planets in orbit, but it makes no noise. It doesn't scream. Aggression is loud, it's brittle, and it's exhausting. If you feel like you have to scream at the world or at yourself to get things done, you're using aggression, not will. You're just compensating for a lack of real power with noise.
Real force is silent. I like that. Okay, mistake 2, relying on motivation.
This is worth repeating because it's the #1 killer of dreams. Motivation is a feeling. It's a mood. A routine is a vehicle. You can't drive a car on mood. You need a vehicle. Rely on the routine, especially when the feeling is gone.
That's when the work actually counts, isn't it?
That is the only time it counts. Anyone can work when they feel like it. The dynamic force is shown when you work when you don't feel like it.
Mistake 3, switching goals. The mental polygamist again.
And the fix here is just to embrace the boredom. Boring progress is better than exciting restarts. If you're bored, it probably means you're doing the real work. The excitement of the start is a drug. You have to detox from it.
Mistake 4, overthinking.
Action cures overthinking.
Paralysis by analysis. We sit and think, what if I fail? What if this isn't the right path? The fix is simple. Action cures fear. Action cures overthinking. When you're stuck in a mental loop, move your body. Do something physical.
Just do the dishes. Or take a walk. Just break the static.
Exactly. Motion changes emotion.
And finally, mistake 5. Intensity bursts.
The crash and burn. The fix is the hydraulic jack. Aim for sustainability. If you can't keep the pace up for a month, you are going too fast. If you're burned out after 3 days, you are using a sledgehammer.
Okay. We've unpacked the theory, the leaks, the strategies, and the mistakes. Now, we want to help you actually build this. We don't want this to just be another good idea that dies in the graveyard.
We're going to do a dynamic force builder.
I invite you, the listener, to pause if you need to, or you can just do this mentally right now. We're going to walk through 5 steps to get your jack in place.
Okay, step 1. Choose one aim.
Just one?
1. And state it in simple language. No jargon. I will write the chapter. I will fix the relationship. I will get fit. Simple, declarative.
Okay. Step 2. Choose one daily proof action.
Something small you can do today, not next week, today. It serves as proof that the I is in charge. It could be sending 1 email, doing 5 push-ups, writing just 50 words.
It just has to be non-negotiable.
Yes, that's the click of the jack.
Step 3. Choose one distraction to cut.
Identify the leak. Is it checking the news first thing? Is it that negative self-talk? Is it scrolling social media before bed? Pick one leak and decide to plug it. Just one.
Step 4. Choose one reinforcement phrase.
You need a mantra to override the passive mind when it starts complaining. Atkinson suggests, I can and I will. Or simply, steady pressure. Find the words that snap you back to the wheel.
I like steady pressure. Reminds me to just slow down and push. Okay, step 5. The stall plan.
This is so crucial. Decide now what you will do when you feel lazy. Because you will feel lazy. It's a biological certainty, so have a plan. When I feel like quitting, I will do just 5 minutes more.
I will do just 5 minutes. That's my favorite stall buster.
It works because it tricks the brain, right? It lowers the barrier. The brain says, I can't do an hour, but it also says, well, I guess I can do 5 minutes. And usually, once you start, you just keep going.
So we have the plan. The final piece is the commitment.
A calm commitment. Not a big hiked up thing, just a quiet decision that you're going to apply steady pressure.
And I would suggest taking that first proof action immediately after this conversation ends. Don't wait.
Transition immediately from listening to doing. Don't let the energy leak out.
This has been a really powerful way to look at what it takes to actually move the needle in our lives. It's refreshing to hear that it's not about magic, it's about better mechanics. Let's recap what we've covered.
Let's hit the main points.
First, dynamic force is that transition from thinking to doing. Potential to kinetic energy.
And determination is a trained stance, not a feeling you have to wait for.
Concentration is the act of refusing to scatter your energy. It's the burning glass.
And you have to plug the leaks. Stop starting and stopping. Stop arguing with yourself after you've made a decision.
Apply steady pressure. The hydraulic jack beats the sledgehammer every time.
And maintain integrity. Use your will for mastery, never for manipulation.
And finally, action is the cure for overthinking.
That really is a toolkit for life right there.
It is.
Yeah.
And this conversation sets us up perfectly for our next one.
It does. In bonus episode 15, we're going to talk about claiming your own. Once you have this dynamic force moving, how do you take ownership of the environment you've created? How do you stand in that space without, feeling like an imposter?
I cannot wait for that one. It feels like the absolute natural next step.
It connects perfectly to everything we discussed today.
Thanks for being here. If you want the full series, check the playlist, and please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.